Why is that Chafam based on the top? Regarding the moon, if it was seen in its proper time, we're not going to frighten them to say that they didn't see it la'abra in order to extend the month. My time why is that Chafam based on the top? Because this looks like a lie, and this doesn't look like a lie. When they came to say that they saw the new moon in the sky, so if they saw it, that means a whole bunch of other people saw it. And if Bezdin is not going to make the next day Rosh Chodesh, then it's very apparent that some falsehood is going on over here. So therefore, we're not allowed to frighten them into saying that they didn't see it. However, if no one saw the moon in the sky, and then two people somehow give edus that they saw the moon, so it's not apparent that they're lying, because it's very possible that they did see it and just no one else saw it, and therefore we're going to frighten them into saying that they did see it even though they didn't, but we're not going to frighten them into saying that they didn't see it if they did. And now we finally arrived at some of the detailed Gemaras about Kiddush HaChodesh, so we're going to have somewhat of an introduction. The moon's source of light comes from the sun reflecting off of it, and important to note, at most, only half of the moon can be visible. Hold the ball in front of you or to the side of you, you can only see the half that's facing you, so it's the same thing with the moon. So how much of the moon is visible depends on the moon's position relative to the sun and the earth. For example, when the moon has completed half of its orbit around the earth, it's positioned on one side of the earth with the sun on the other side, creating the effect known as full moon. If you were to stand with a light bulb above your head to the left and a ball raised above your head to your right, the entire half of the ball facing you would be illuminated. Now here's where this is relevant for Kiddush HaChodesh. We know that the orbit of the moon around the earth takes 29 days and a bit. When the moon moves back to its starting position, it's right in front of the sun, aligned with it. Thereby all the sun's light is shining on the half of the moon facing away from the earth, making it impossible to see the moon. That point of the moon's alignment with the sun is called the Moilad, the birth of the new moon. It's the birth because pretty soon afterwards, anywhere between 6 and 18 hours, as we're soon to learn in the Gemara, we're once again able to see a small sliver of the moon as it continues its orbit. Now, as an aside, during Birkas HaChodesh on Shabbos and Varchim, when they announce the Moilad, be it in Yiddish, Hebrew, or English, whatever language, you now know that they're announcing the precise moment the moon is going to reach the end of its old orbit and the beginning of the new one. So back to Kiddush HaChodesh, when Edom testified that they saw the new moon, that means that the moon had completed its orbit, was invisible for a bit, and then they saw the small sliver of the new emerging moon, marking it as a new month, time for Rosh Chodesh. And now before we jump into the Gemara, it's important to note that our explanation is going to be the absolutely most basic, perhaps even a bit oversimplified, because if one truly wants to understand all the details of the Gemara and Rashi, we would need to actually have to have a visual, the different positions of the moon vis-a-vis the sun and the earth, necessitating graphs, charts, and pictures, which are obviously all beyond the scope of this audio share. However, do not hesitate to check out all the amazing material on alldaf.org. They're a one-stop shop for a thorough understanding of these sugyas. So now let's jump in. Amar Shmuel, he says, I can establish, I can fix it up for all the diaspora. What does that mean? He's saying, I'm such an expert in astronomy and the path of the moon vis-a-vis the sun and the earth, we in Galus don't need to rely on Edom and Bezdin and Eretz Yisrael to Mekadesh the month and then wait for them to send messengers informing of us when Rosh Chodesh was. I can establish all the new months already now, similar to the way our calendar works. So now, Amar le Abba, Avud Rav Simlai l'Shmuel, Abba, the father of Rav Simlai, told Shmuel, Yada Mar Hai Milsa Tanya B'Said HaIbur, do you know how to explain that which is taught in the Brisa of Said HaIbur? This Brisa contained a number of important calculations that were used to determine the Moilad. However, it was full of cryptic statements. So do you know how to explain the following statement? Noilad Kadim Chatzos, or Noilad Achar Chatzos, the Noilad before Chatzos, the Noilad after Chatzos, do you know what that means? So Amar Shmuel told him, Loi, I don't know what it means. So Amar he said, Midahala Yadamar, if you don't know how to explain that, there's probably something else that you also don't know how to explain. And now we're going to try to understand what this means. Noilad Kadim Chatzos or Noilad Achar Chatzos. Kisalik Rav Zera, when Rav Zera went to Eretz Yisrael, Shachulhu, he sent a message back to them. This means that the night and its following day have to be part of the new moon, meaning the new moon has to be visible in the night and the following day. And Vazusha Amar Abba Avud Rav Simlai, that's what Abba, the father of Rav Simlai, had told Shmuel. He was telling him that this statement of the Bryce of Said HaIbur means that we can calculate the Moilad based off of this statement. If the Moilad was before midday, that means that the moon is going to be visible by Shkia time, 6 hours later. However, if the Moilad was not before Chatzos, it wasn't before midday, then that means you're not going to be able to see the new moon around Shkia time. But now the Gemara asks, what does it make a difference if we know this calculation? Who cares if we know when the Moilad is? We can only declare Rosh Chodesh based off of the testimony of Edom anyway, and not based off our own calculations. So what's this going to help us? So Amar Rashi answers, that's to be able to contradict Edom. If Edom come and they tell us something that doesn't fit with this calculation that we just mentioned, so then we're going to be able to contradict them and say that that's not true, and that's why it's relevant. And another member, Amar Zera, Amar Nachman, he says, the moon is actually covered over, it's invisible for 24 hours. As we said, during the actual Moilad, the alignment of the moon with the sun, the moon is invisible. So it's not only during the actual Moilad, it's also right before the Moilad and right after the Moilad as well. The moon is invisible to the naked eye. That's because the sliver that technically would be visible is too small. That period, Reb Zeir is saying, Shem Reb Nachman, is 24 hours long. Now, Lidhi done, for us in Bavel, Shis Ma'atika Utam Nisrei Mechadta. The moon is invisible for 6 hours of the old cycle and 18 hours into the new cycle. Lidhi for them in Eretz Yisrael, Shis Mechadta The moon is invisible for the first 6 hours of the new cycle and for the last 18 hours of the old cycle. Now, my nafkamina, once again, we ask, why is that relevant? It doesn't make a difference. We just need to wait till Eidim come and tell us when they saw the new moon. So Rabashi says, once again, to be able to contradict them. If they tell us something that doesn't work out with this calculation, so then we're able to contradict them and say that they're not saying the truth. And now further explaining something that we mentioned a bit ago, Amar Mar, he had said, we said that the night and the day have to be from the new moon, meaning the new moon has to be visible in the night and the day that follows it. And now the Gemara asks, Manolan, how do we know that? How do we know that the night comes before the day over here? Rabbi Yochanan, he says, we have a pasuk about Yom Kippur that tells us, May Erev Ad Erev, from evening until another evening. So we see the Yom Kippur, namely a day starts at nighttime, and therefore our cheshbon begins at night, not during the day. Now Rosh Hashanah, he says, we have a pasuk that tells us that you're not allowed to eat chametz all the way up until the end of Pesach, and that pasuk tells us, Ad Yom Ha'echad V'Esrim L'Chodesh Ba'erev, until the 21st day in the evening, meaning you're not allowed to eat chametz up until and including the 21st day of Nisan. However, 21st day in the evening, meaning the evening of the 22nd day, that already begins after Pesach and you're allowed to eat chametz. The Gemara is my benayu. What's the difference between these two understandings? So Abai Amar, he says, Mashmaz Darshan Eka benayu. The difference is, how do you darshan the pasuk? No real nafkamina. Rava Amar, he says, Chatzos Laila Eka benayu. There's actually a real difference. Now, put most simply, what's the difference? The first pasuk teaches us that it's a new day when the night begins. The second pasuk teaches us that it's a new day when the previous day ends and then becomes night. So what's the difference? The first limud focuses on the beginning of the night. Therefore, if the moon was still visible at the beginning of the night, Rosh Chodesh can't be declared the next day, as we said. But this is not so according to the second pasuk. The new day isn't determined by the beginning of the night, because the wording of Ba'erev is referring to the end of the last day of Pesach. Therefore, one could learn from this pasuk that even if the moon was visible at the beginning of the night, Rosh Chodesh still could be proclaimed the next day. And another member, Amar Zera, Amar Nachman, he says, Kol Svekel L'Kamei Shadinon. Any doubt that we have, we're going to throw it forward. Remember, that means to say, the Chameser V'Shitzar Avdinon, we're going to keep Yontif the 15th and 16th of the month, our base are Lei Avdinon, but we're not going to keep Yontif the 14th of the month. Namely, if we in Galus are in doubt when Bezdin and Eretz Yisrael establish Rosh Chodesh Nisan or Tishrei, then we have to keep an extra day of Pesach, which the Torah says begins on the 15th of Nisan, and we also have to keep an extra day of Sukkot, which the Torah says begins on the 15th of Tishrei. And that's because Bezdin could have made day 30 of Adar or Elul Rosh Chodesh, or day 31 Rosh Chodesh, and because of this doubt, we have to keep an extra day of Yontif. However, it's only the 16th, the day after the 15th, forward, that's the understanding of the word forward, we throw it forward in the Gemara, but not the 14th, that would be backwards. That's because Rosh Chodesh is never on the 29th day of the month, so therefore, even though we're besuffic, it's never going to be that the 14th day is actually Yontif. The Gemara continues asking, we should keep the 14th day out of doubt, because Delma Chasru La'av V'Chasru La'el, perhaps not only was El a 29-day month, it could be that Av was also a 29-day month. And you're right, if only El was a 29-day month, then we would not have to keep the 14th out of doubt that maybe it's Yontif. However, if Av was also a 29-day month, then the 14th of Tishrei very possibly is the first day of Sukkot. So since that might be the scenario, we should have to keep the 14th day of Tishrei as well, because perhaps that's Sukkot. So the Gemara answers, Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph on the top, that's not possible, that's never going to be a doubt for us, because Trei Yarchi Chaseri Kala Islahu, 2 months in a row, there are going to be months that are Chaser, that are going to be 29-day months, that's going to be something that has a koil, that's going to have a voice, everyone's going to know about that, and therefore it's never going to be a doubt for us. We're going to know if both El and Av were Chaser months, were 29-day months, and we're never going to have a doubt about that, and therefore we don't have to keep the 14th day of Tishrei Sukkot out of doubt. Now we actually have a story about the people in Bavel not knowing when Rosh Chodesh was. Levi Ikla Bavel b'Chatzar b'Tishrei. Levi visited Bavel on the 11th of Tishrei, namely the day after Yom Kippur. Amar, he told them, Basam Tavshila de Bavloi b'Yom Rabba de Marava. The dish of the Babylonians is very sweet on the great day of the people in Eretz Yisrael. The great day is referring to Yom Kippur, and he was basically telling them that the day that they were treating as the 11th of Tishrei was being celebrated as Yom Kippur in Eretz Yisrael, because the Bezdin had extended Elul, making it a 30-day month. And really today, what you Babylonians think is the 11th day of Tishrei, it's actually the 10th day of Tishrei, it's really Yom Kippur. So Amalei, they told Levi, Aseh, to testify that that is so, that they extended Elul, and then we will keep today as Yom Kippur as well. Amalahu, he told them, Loi Shamati Pi Bezdin Mekodesh. I did not hear from Bezdin's mouth, I did not hear that they said Mekodesh, and since, even though he knew that it was Mekodesh, since he didn't personally hear it, he couldn't testify about it, and therefore they did not have to keep the 11th day of Tishrei as Yom Kippur as well. We're going to stop here for the day. Pick up tomorrow, continuing to talk about this topic of being unsure of when Rosh Chodesh was. For now, everyone should have a wonderful day.